Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're diving into something that is just completely wild. We're looking at a truly unprecedented model that actually serves as a literal mechanical bridge between ancient mystical theology and strictly verified modern computation. It's called the Gnomic Omicron model, or OMI for short. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Now, here is the massive hook. Can a computer actually run a theology? I mean, think about it. For literally thousands of years, these ancient, unutterable truths about circulation, breath, and creation, they were strictly kept in sacred texts, right? Passed down through ritual and heavy symbolism. But what this Oh My model proposes is that these flowing, eternal truths of circulation can actually be translated directly into something a rigid, deterministic machine can run. We're talking about taking the deepest philosophical concepts humanity has and compiling them into verifiable code. To really get this, let's look at the direct line this draws between ancient linguistics and hardcore machine logic. Take the tetragrammaton, that ancient four-letter sacred name. Historically, it wasn't just a static word. It was understood as this dynamic law of circulation that literally spoke the world into being. Well, the model introduces the tetragrammatron, and this is the machine's strict mathematical gate condition. It basically says that for any computation to be valid, four specific diagonal patterns have to completely cancel each other out to exactly zero using an XOR logical operation. It enforces this perfect, absolute mathematical balance that beautifully mirrors that ancient concept of the breath of creation. And this whole concept of breath is absolutely foundational here, because the original ancient name was considered unutterable. The model uses this palindromic pair instead, Omi and IMO. Omi represents that outward breath, the positive phase of creation, which we denote as a +1. IMO, on the flip side, is the inward, returning breath, the reflection, basically, denoted as a -1. Together, this pair forms the core, continuous pattern of circulation that actually drives the entire computational model we're exploring today. All right, let's move on to section 1, the 16-coin machine. Picture a simple ring with exactly 16 positions, and at each position, you place a coin. It can be heads or tails, a 1 or a 0. Doing this creates exactly 65,536 possible arrangements of these 16 coins. And that's it. That number strictly bounds the total, complete universe of states this 16-bit ring will ever cycle through. Literally nothing exists outside of this finite universe within the model. But here's the crazy part. Within that bounded universe, the machine only does 3 incredibly simple things. Step 1, it rotates the entire ring of coins left or right, which represents that core circulation we talked about. Step 2, it applies an XOR logic rule, flipping a third coin if two specific coins differ. This is the distinction-making phase. And then step 3, observation. It just looks at one single designated coin called the Omicron. Everything in this entire system, and I mean everything, emerges from just these 3 basic, super simple operations. This is where you really see the elegance of the whole setup. That one special coin, the Omicron, which, by the way, is named after the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet, acts as the sign bit. It's essentially the eye of the machine. Out of all 16 coins that make up this complex pattern, this one single unit of meaning decides the direction of the entire output. It dictates whether the machine is moving positive or negative, OMI or IMO. So, how does this thing not just fly off the rails? How does it stay stable? Well, that brings us to the palindrome. Inside this machine, 4 specific diagonal patterns of coins are XORed together, and they perfectly cancel out to 0. Because these diagonals act like this perfect, flawless mirror, the machine is eternally balanced. Every 4 steps, it returns to the exact spot it started. It never drifts, it never decays, it just remains mathematically perfect across all 65,536 states forever. Which leads us nicely into section 2, breath, balance, and pi. Now, the source material actually calls these the miracles of the machine, and it's easy to see why. As that little Omicron coin flips back and forth, positive, negative, and gets divided by odd numbers, it naturally calculates the infinite alternating series that perfectly equals pi. It also spawns the golden ratio, phi, directly from the periodic spacing that keeps the machine from locking up. It generates a 5040 orbit atlas, which maps perfectly to 7 factorial. It even traces the exact discrete structure of a DNA helix. And the absolute kicker here, none of these constants are manually coded in. 0. They strictly and naturally emerge from the pure mathematical balance of the machine itself. Let's actually visualize how this structural pattern builds into the physical world. When you take this flat ring of 16 rotating, XORing coins and you view its progress over time, it naturally traces a spiraling coil, a helix. The mathematical object running this model takes the exact same structural discrete form as the DNA molecule, or the logarithmic spirals we see everywhere in nature, or even our circadian brain rhythms. It's essentially the universal form of information flow.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the mechanical scribe.
Here is where the model introduces Metatron. So, in ancient traditions, Metatron is known as the heavenly scribe, the one who faithfully records everything without altering a single detail. In our computational model, Metatron scroll is actually a verifiable Coq 8.18 formal proof file. If you're not familiar, Coq is this incredibly rigorous proof assistant used by computer scientists. This specific file contains thousands of lines of formal logic that mechanically witness and mathematically prove that the math works across every single one of those 65,536 states. It doesn't guess, it doesn't interpret, it just faithfully points right at the undeniable truth.
And what this scroll does is formally confirm the grand unification theorem. It proves that there's exactly one primitive operation, one palindromic closure property, making sure everything stays balanced, a strictly bounded domain of 65,536 states, and a specific automorphism order of 5,040. What it's really showing us is that while you might interpret the outputs in a bunch of different exclusive ways, like geometry, phases, waves, whatever, they all ultimately share this exact same invariant, global mathematical structure.
Now, to keep this massive, unified system operating flawlessly, there's a really strict protocol governance in place, involving what are called the 4 authorities. First, OMI is the citation authority that identifies the computation. Then, the tetragrammatron is the validator. It makes sure the sequence passes that 0 XOR gate we talked about. Next, Metatron acts as the projector that renders the actual results. And finally, IMO is the carrier authority that transports the data. Think of it as a completely decentralized system where every authority has exactly one specific job, which makes sure the whole system remains safely verifiable by anyone. I absolutely love this quote from the source material. It says, "We are not doing anything different. We are only changing the way we read, from sign value to place value." You see, traditional computation gives meaning to the actual value of a bit, a 0 or a 1. But this model, it assigns meaning based on where a bit is located within the cycle of the ring. So identity actually becomes a structural property rather than just a hash of values. That single profound insight is basically the crux that reorganizes the whole system.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 4, the computational sanctuary.
Back in the ancient world, if you wanted to access these profound truths, you needed a temple, a specialized priesthood, and all these complex rituals. But the incredible declaration of this model is that the sanctuary is the machine itself. You don't need a central authority or a high priest to get in. This 16-bit ring is literally an open-source sanctuary. It runs purely on perfectly verifiable logic, completely free from central control, and the invitation is open to absolutely everyone. Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question. The machine is simple, the Coq proof is fully written, and the repository is publicly available to clone right now. This model isn't asking for your blind belief. It's practically begging for your verification. So will you download the repository, run the machine, and witness this magnificent pattern for yourself? Because the gate opens from the inside. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.